Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I want to talk with you today about 5 ethical dilemmas in the time of COVID and the time of political polarization. For each dilemma, I'm going to offer a contrasting position. The first 3 about COVID. Imagine you're a healthcare administrator. You're 45 years old, you don't see patients, and so you're not a frontline health provider, and you have no underlying conditions. But your county's vaccination priority list includes healthcare administrators in the category of healthcare workers. Now there's a shortage of vaccine in your county. Should you take the vaccine or wait until the general public of your age is offered the vaccine? Well, here is the argument or an argument for taking the vaccine. You indirectly affect the health care of countless people. If you contract serious COVID, many people are more likely to suffer. That's why the county deemed you eligible to take the vaccine. So you should take the vaccine as soon as possible to protect yourself and, to the extent that the vaccine reduces transmissibility, your colleagues, the beneficiaries of your work, and your family and friends. In contrast, here's an argument for waiting. The likelihood of your being infected and, importantly, being debilitated from COVID is tiny if you follow the standard preventive advice: social distancing, mask wearing, and hand washing. Even if you later test positive and in addition become symptomatic, at your age and with your lack of underlying conditions, the chances are small that it would prevent you from doing your job more than briefly. That's not much different from the brief flu-like response that occurs in 15 to 20% of vaccinated people in your age bracket. Now, most people can gin up some logical, legal, or ethical reason why they should be prioritized, even justifying pulling strings or lying to get the vaccine early. By your waiting and letting your peers, your friends, and your family know that you're waiting rather than taking advantage of the law, you'll generate multiplicative benefits. You're letting your peers know of your decision to wait will make them more likely to do so, thereby freeing up vaccine for people who are more likely to contract serious COVID. Okay, ethical dilemma number 2. You're hospitalized with COVID and beg the doctor to take you off the ventilator and let you go home to die. You plead, "The world hates me, has long hated me, and I'm 75 already, and I have underlying conditions. If I survive COVID, I'll probably die sooner than later with a more prolonged dying process, torturing not only me but my family, while using up precious resources from the healthcare system, which is already so overtaxed that 195,000 people die every year just in hospitals alone from medical errors, plus countless more who suffer excess morbidity, that is, more pain, longer recoveries. Please, please, take me off the ventilator so a more deserving person can get the ventilator, get my hospital bed, and get that expensive medical care that's in short supply." What should the doctor do? First, here is the argument or an argument for the doctor refusing to take you off the ventilator. Doing so is illegal and could result in the physician losing his or her license. Plus, it's a slippery slope. If the physician plays God and, even in not life or death situations, allocates an hour so he or she spends more time caring for a patient who is a young cancer researcher, let's say, and less time on an equally sick old heroin dealer, it starts a dangerous trend downward. Now here's an argument for the doctor taking the patient off the ventilator. One of a person's most important rights should be the freedom to live or die. Indeed, that's the driving principle behind right to die laws that are extant in a number of states. Apart from legality, in terms of societal norms, humankind has chosen to venerate people who, for example, quote, "regret that I only have one life to live for my country." Or give, I guess, for my country. Thousands of young people, less famous, of course, with a whole life ahead of them, choose to become frontline infantrymen, knowing that they greatly increase their chances of early death. Police and firefighters, the firefighters mainly because of smoke inhalation, also put themselves at far greater risk of dying early. That 75-year-old has underlying conditions and not irrationally asserts that the ventilator, the hospital bed, and the expensive medical care would merely extend her life so she could die a more prolonged, painful, system-taxing death. Additionally, she insists that she has long been hated by everyone who knows her. In this most personal decisions, the life and death decision, ethics dictate that her wishes be honored. Ethical dilemma number 3. Again, this is the third and final one regarding COVID, then we'll turn to political issues. You own a nail salon in a locale that has a low incidence of COVID and a very low incidence of death that's primarily caused by COVID rather than by the person's underlying conditions. But you're subject to a geographically broad lockdown of salons. Do you honor it? Or Do you do what your competitors are doing, or at least some of your competitors are doing? Sneaking people in through the back door, taking COVID precautions, shields, masks, hand washing, good air circulation, minimizing time in close contact. Thereby, they're taking away your would-be customers. You're an immigrant, say, from Vietnam. There's lots of Vietnamese nail people. And you employ a few fellow immigrants. You cry, we're all struggling to keep from joining the hordes in the homeless encampments. Forget the American dream. Should you defy the lockdown order? Well, first, here is an argument for following the law. Public health experts have deemed it in the public interest to keep nail and hair salons closed. In certain locales, of course. Politicians have evaluated those recommendations in light of broader considerations and have issued the lockdown order that applies to this particular person in the locale we're talking about. So, following that order is part of the social contract that you've implicitly signed when choosing to live in a given jurisdiction. Additionally, we're learning that new strains of the virus are more contagious and possibly even more deadly. Even your precautions may be putting yourself and your customers at risk by letting them in to do their nails. After all, each day a good number of people are going to be spending extended time in your store, likely one with a low ceiling and not with excellent air circulation systems, especially in winter when you can't leave doors and windows open without people freezing and thus refusing to use your salon. In addition, you're violating the law encourages other nail and hair salons to violate the law, which greatly multiplies the risk of the pandemic causing that low incidence of COVID in your locale to rise. That imposes real and large human costs, far beyond the benefits that a customer derives from having their nails done rather than doing it themselves. Buying a bottle of nail polish, a nail file. Okay, now here's an argument for defying the law. We must think probabilistically, and we're talking about the law here precluding the nail salon owner from opening up her business. We must think probabilistically. That salon owner's precautions make it very unlikely that a significant number of people will contract COVID that's symptomatic, let alone that causes serious disease or death. That's especially likely because the county has a low incidence of positivity, let alone death. Even more important, we must be utilitarian. Does net benefit or liability accrue from defying the law and staying open? The risks seem low in this case, yet with nearly 100% certitude, all the customers will have derived a measure of happiness from having their nails done professionally. And so that's especially important in these times that are dominated by COVID and the associated fears, as well as by the tensions that are caused by the profound political polarization that has rended this nation. A final plus for defying the law and opening up her salon is that the owner and her employees and their families will more likely be saved from homelessness. Now let's turn to the final two ethical dilemmas of the day. Both of these are regarding the political polarization. Number 4, you've tried to convince your adult sibling that liberal policies are wise, yet she insists that conservative policies are better. Do you give up? Well, here's an argument for persisting. Most of the intelligentsia believes that core liberal beliefs are clearly best for humankind. The big 3 of those beliefs are the primacy of reducing income inequality, so-called systemic racism, and reducing our carbon footprint. It's worth extra effort to try to convince your sibling of the flawed thinking, not only to change your sibling's mind, but so that as she talks with friends and family, she won't try to convince them to think and vote for conservative lawmakers. Now, conversely, here is an argument for giving up on that person. Unless you're unusually persuasive, it's extremely difficult to change an adult's perspective on an issue that tends to be so deeply and pervasively felt as liberal versus conservatism. There's even evidence now that there's a genetic component to political views. And that's especially so in an era in which all of society's money molders have for decades now disproportionately tried to persuade the public that liberal ideas generally are better than conservative ones. The most likely outcome of your continuing to badger her, even if attempted tactfully, is to build a wall between you that will be very tough to dismantle. Besides, just because liberal views are hegemonic doesn't mean that there aren't conservative perspectives worth considering. The best society is one that encourages fair-minded consideration of the full marketplace of responsibly held ideas. And the 5th of these current dilemmas is this. You can hide a portion of your income and you plan to give the tax saving to a nonprofit that more efficiently helps people. Here's an argument for paying the taxes. You tacitly have signed on to a social contract when you choose to live in a jurisdiction, as I said earlier. That requires you to follow its laws, including to report the income to the IRS and your state's and local's taxing entity and pay the taxes. And finally, here's an argument against paying the taxes, instead donating the money to a nonprofit. More important than following the law is doing what's best for humankind. Government's inefficiency with tax dollars is legion, so a person's behavior should answer to a higher authority. As long as a nonprofit is vetted for efficiency, for example, it's top rated on respected review sites such as Charity Navigator, GuideStar, and GiveWell, ethics demand donating the money. Of course, hiding the money to buy yourself stuff is unethical. The takeaway? People would get along better, polarization would be reduced, and better societal solutions developed if we recognize that there often are at least two sides to most major issues. Perhaps these 5 examples makes that clear. In any event, I thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.